Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Rusty Johnson here with me today. How you doing, Rusty?
It's a Monday.
Okay.
It's a Monday. That's a good thing, actually.
Right? What do Mondays mean for you when you pronounce them that way?
Well, it means it's a start to a new week. It's a start to a new week and kicking it off. So there's so much momentum, so many things happening.
Yep. Any rituals? I'm sorry, buddy. I said good morning. It's a Monday. Do you have any rituals that you do on Mondays?
That is a good question. Besides my coffee in the morning, which is pretty much a ritual every single morning, not really, no. I mean, maybe I should get a ritual on Monday mornings. That's actually, I'm going to take a note on that one.
Yeah, some people they start their week off by doing something special.
Yeah.
Some people say, you know what? I'm not even going to treat Monday like the first day of the week. I'm going to treat Sunday like the first day of the week, and so we'll start there.
Yep. And right now, I mean, honestly, Cedric, it seems like everything kind of blends together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, the days right now, I mean, yeah, you've got the work week. I work for an awesome organization, which actually serves and works with foster youth.
Really?
Here in Iowa. Yeah. YSS. And, so of course, Monday through Friday, yes, that is the work week. But I tell you what, it just all kind of blends right now, especially since I don't leave my house. You can tell by my hair right now. It's very bushy and not cut. So I don't leave the house much, and it just kind of all blends the days.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Where you from?
So originally from Iowa. Was blessed and honored to have the opportunity to move back here to Iowa after leaving Iowa for about, 15 some years, traveling around, touring, playing music, doing my thing, and moved back to Iowa about 4 years ago. So kind of, they say with Iowa, and I know you probably have your favorite state, or you're probably allegiance to a state. Right. But Iowa, you can move away, but it always brings you back. It really does.
Wow. That's very refreshing to hear. And because you speak of it that way, I'd love for you to tell me, about some of the things that stick out about Iowa. I mean, what are your national birds, fruits, holidays? What foods are y'all known for? Tell me all about it.
Oh, now you're going to quiz me. So yeah, somebody doesn't take my Iowa card after this.
Okay, yeah, let's see what you got.
Okay, so I do know our bird is the goldfinch.
Okay.
And the great thing about Iowa is it has an eclectic folk, I guess you could say, type of people. But it's just, I've been blessed to live all over the place, even in different countries. And there's something about Iowa and you hear about it, the people that live here. Some people might get annoyed when you're standing in the gas station or the convenience store and people in front of you are talking about the weather and you're in a hurry and you want to get going, you want to get chopping. But there's something that's said about that. It's just a different pace of life. It's and how people really do care about each other and how they talk and it's great living. I lived in Los Angeles County for a bit and Dallas and all over the place. And just even to pick up the phone if you have a complaint or a compliment about the city, or if you're trying to get trash picked up or something like that. And first off, you get a live person on the phone.
Right.
Seriously, a really live person. And you talk to them, and guess what? Mmaybe if you call back 2 weeks later, it'll be that same person that's on the phone.
Yeah.
And so it's just, like I say, it's a different world. My mom-in-law just moved here. Oh goodness, what? A year ago, I think. And her slogan is Iowa is heaven after all.
Wow.
And she moved from Los Angeles County as well, Southern California, and she moved here. And it really is. It's just, it's a great place. I get to experience the seasons again, which you don't realize until you move away. The how we take seasons for granted: fall, autumn, winter, summer. When you're in places that it's beautiful all year round, you kind of, I know Iowans are going to hate me for this, but you do. You kind of miss the winters. You kind of miss the blizzards. Yes, I said it. The blizzards and all that, because people here in Iowa say, "Shh, don't say that word, blizzards." Right. But you do. You miss the. I don't know. It's just great. Like now with the leaves getting ready to start falling and the colors changing, and it just, I don't know, it gets me all giddy inside. So that's part of why I love Iowa. Of course, we have the best state fair, the Iowa State Fair. Have you heard of the Iowa State Fair, Cedric?
Yes, I have.
Of course you have, because it's
second only to the Ohio State Fair.
Oh, bring it on. Bring it on. So we got a whole musical written after our state fair.
Really?
And state fair. And and that goes to a place too. There's a song in the state fair musical that talks about Iowa stubborn. And it talks about how people in Iowa can be stubborn, but they really do. They have the best intentions. And so we've got the state fair, of course, corn. And that's, until you taste Iowa corn, you don't know what I'm talking about. Because you go to the grocery, you think corn is corn.
Yep.
I'll never forget when my mom, my adopted mother, she mailed us corn from Iowa to California. And we gave some to our neighbor who happened to be a caterer. He professionally catered events. And from then on, he was asking us every week, can you get us more corn? Can you get more corn? Again, just great stuff. Great stuff.
What? When you talk about corn and you talk about the state fair and you're talking about the seasons, I need to do a couple shout outs. First of all, shout out to Iowa. You all sound like a beautiful state. You sound like a beautiful community. I'd love to experience you again in my life. Shout out to Ohio. Shout out to the agriculturalist out there. Shout out to Stephen Cleary. And I appreciate each and every person who's in the building today. We're in for a great conversation with Rusty Johnson. And when it was all said and done, Rusty, you became an advocate. You became a leader in your prospective communities. And you also became a musician. And we're going to talk about that today for those of you who've tuned in. But can you take me back to the beginning? What was your early childhood like?
Oh, okay. That's a loaded topic.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I guess the best way to say it is I was kind of raised like everybody else, two parents. I have a younger sister, and I say biological now, but a younger biological sister, two biological older sisters. And we were raised in what we now call, my sisters and I, the greenhouse. And it was because it was green. It wasn't the house full of plants. And, I was raised there up until I was about, I want to say, in third grade. So I go more kind of by grades versus ages because it's easier for me to piece together things.
I do too. Go ahead.
Because it kind of, things blur, things kind of start blurring. And now that I'm on the other side of the fence and I work with childhood trauma and I work, with ACEs, I don't know if you've ever talked about that on one of your segments, a really interesting topic. And when I say ACEs, I'm talking about adverse childhood experiences. And there's a whole scale now there to figure out these different things. And it blurs. And so going back to about third grade, fourth grade, which is when I placed myself, that's when I was removed for the first time. And again, piecing things together, I was removed into a hospital at that point, which was kind of a residential program because they didn't know what to do with me. Found out that in third, fourth grade, I was massively depressed. My mother was an alcoholic. My father, recovering alcoholic. And things were just not going well in the home. It was a really, really dysfunctional household. And again, it's weird because you look back at the memories.
Right.
And to me, again, I was a kid, so I saw things so differently. I didn't know, when my mother was standing, or when my mother was standing on the roof of the house about to jump off, to me, that didn't process as a crisis. It didn't process, or all the police always being over every other day to my house, or it didn't process. So,
how old were you at this time? Well, what grade were you in at this time?
About third, fourth grade at this point. So second, it actually started earlier than that, but when I was removed was about third or fourth grade.
Okay. And how did anyone figure out that you were depressed? Did they actually classify you this way?
So well, they did it at first. I'll never forget the day that I woke up, and I think I was just at my breaking point. And again, as a child, it's really hard to identify or to know what was going on. My mother wasn't living with us. At that time, she was actually in a motel right down the road, trying to come into the house, break into the house all the time. It was just really dysfunction. But I woke up one morning and I was, I just didn't feel right, and I couldn't stop crying. I'll never forget that. I sat on the top of the stairs, and we had a long staircase that went down, and it had to be, I watched my dad go to work, and I just started bawling and crying and crying. And my sister came and she sat next to me, couldn't figure out what was wrong. We were instructed at all times not to call my father at work because that was like a big sin. We weren't supposed to do that, but she called him because she didn't know what else to do. I remember, again, just memories coming back. I remember sitting in front of the refrigerator, opening the refrigerator and just sitting there bawling, not even being able to eat, not being hungry. Again, these are emotions you don't know how to handle because you don't know what you're going through.
Right.
And finally, it would, go ahead.
So what is it that while all these things are going on, the police are coming, the drinking is happening, the parties, probably some arguments in there, might even have been some skipped meals in there, that on the surface it was a blur, but deep down inside you knew that something wasn't right. And what was happening?
Well, definitely you knew something wasn't right when you would have our father sitting up all night long in a chair by the door on guard.
Right.
Or when there would be a fight and my mother would come in and cut the buttons straight off of his shirt.
Wow.
It goes on and on. There's so many stories, but that day when I just was crying, I couldn't, and eventually he came home. So it had to be probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'd been crying that entire day. They didn't know what to do with me. Nobody knew. At this time, now since I talk with my biological sisters, we found out that even before then, my oldest sister had stopped speaking for about 4 or 5 months because she was going through her own drama. She was going through, so eventually she was hospitalized as well. And that's when they took me out. So I can't remember exactly if DHS, which is what we call it here in Iowa, Department of Human Services, got involved then, and they came and they took me and they about 2 hours away to a hospital in Cedar Rapids. And again, as a kid, not knowing what I was going through, let me backtrack on that. This was the first hospital, which would have been here in Des Moines. So not Cedar Rapids. And just then you're put into a hospital where you have kids that are older than you that are being put in seclusion rooms and fall asleep, hearing them scream all night, beating the door, and so the trauma of that too, not knowing, and I'm by no means calling myself a victim, but again, I go back now working on the other side of the fence and seeing that and thinking, so everything in my brain now as a professional thinks, how could have that been better? Or what worked better? Eventually I was put back into the home after, I don't know how long I was in that hospital. Put back in, long story short, it did not work out. I rebelled, I did anything. And maybe back then it was a cry for help to get out, to try. And then I was put into a foster family.
Well, if we can, I want to slow it down a little bit, because you are on the other side of the fence now, and you have more of an introspective understanding of what was going on. And I definitely want to unpack some of what you're saying for our viewers out there. When you were having all these ACEs, as we've learned, adverse childhood experiences, Did you ever witness any attempts to repair your home when when the system got involved, or when you were taken, or when you went to the hospital? Did you find that anybody was trying to repair your home while you was away?
I think that was the original attempt.
Okay.
Was to try. There was early on intervention therapy, trying to figure out how to keep me at home with my father.
Okay.
At that point, there was multiple attempts there, and later on in my story, there was multiple attempts that were only to my detriment.
Oh, wow.
Because it was ultimately at all cost, let's put him back home. He needs to be, which ultimately that's where kids do need to be if it is in the right environment, if it is. But in my situation, it wasn't. But to answer your question, I again, being a kid, it's hard for me to remember a lot, but I do remember there was some intervention.
Okay.
And it was, but I, again, being a kid, acting the way I did, it just was not in my best interest, and maybe even then I knew it.
So it sounds like you went from being sad, just purely sad, to you probably got a little bit angry in there too.
Oh yeah, I shot a gun down the stairs. I did. Yep. I believe me. I did.
You see. This is why I slow you down and open the envelope, because your details are very vivid details of things that were happening. Now, when did you shoot a gun down the stairs, and why?
Oh yeah, we're still at the very beginning of the story here, Cedric.
Okay.
So, this is still way early on. But no, it was actually a BB gun. That's all I had. But I knew how to, and I don't know if I can say this word on here, but I knew how to piss my dad off.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the intention there. I don't remember, but I do remember his footsteps up the stairs after me.
Yeah.
And then it's a big blur, sort of what happened after that, but it was not pleasant. Definitely not pleasant, even in a respectable environment or a constructive environment of how to discipline a kid. And I think that was the breaking point about when I was eventually placed in foster care and ultimately never came back. So there was a time I was put in foster care for only about, I want to say maybe 3 weeks. And then I think I came back home, and then again the BB gun incident happened. It blew up. Then I was taken out, and I was removed and taken away from my sisters, and I was ultimately the first one out of the home who stayed out of the home for the rest of the time. Which isn't my sisters.
When you went into foster care?
So I would have been about, again, going back to it, I would have been about in 3rd grade, I believe, just going into 3rd grade.
Okay. And unfortunately, you went from one traumatic situation to another with a whole lot more elements, because now you're being placed in settings where there's other young people who've had trauma and take us away. So what was it like when you first went into foster care?
Well, yeah, I'll never forget that. It was a farmhouse. The first time I went in, they were in this farmhouse. And I was excited because the house had a couple years ago been hit by a tornado. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Because outside there was wreckage, and it was like a scavenger hunt for me. So I turned it kind of into this exploration type of a thing.
Yep.
And I wanted, and they let me do whatever I wanted with my room. So the first night I moved in, and I've heard them say before that all night long, all they heard was furniture upstairs moving. I was moving the dresser to a different place. I was trying to, I think that was survival for me. I was just trying to do anything I could to adapt and make it my situation. And then again, I moved back home and then came back into the foster home. Now, interesting enough, I moved back to that same foster family, the one who took me the first time for a couple of weeks. The difference is at this point in my journey, I truly believe it was a big blessing that I'd moved into foster care. I was skipping school at this point. And again, I'm only in 2nd, 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Cummings, who is the late Mrs. Cummings now, my second grade teacher, who later became a mentor in my life, would tell me stories about when I'd come to school, and this was still when I was living at my biological household. She'd bring me back to the teacher's lounge, which I do remember this, and she had a brush, and she would scrub me down head to toe because I was so filthy. I was so dirty. She did her absolute best to really. So I go from that type of environment, skipping school, getting scrubbed down with a brush in the teacher's lounge, rebelling, to a structured household that was my first foster family that was a very, very religious.
Okay.
I say religious, ultra conservative, right religious.
Okay.
I wasn't used to that. How could I be used to that? My biological family was, I can't think of the term, but a C&E family, I think is what they call it, a Christmas and Easter, where we'd go to this church, which later on that church played a big impact in my life, but a Christmas and Easter family. To a family that went to church every single Sunday. We would get there about 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe before there, and we wouldn't leave till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Wow. That was just on Sundays. Monday night, they enrolled me in Awana, which was a Christian child's group that would meet. So they drive me up to the church, put me out on Monday nights. Wednesday night, the entire church would come over to the house for individual Bible study, devotions before meals, after meals, prayers all the time. I mean, it was, and Cedric, let me ask you, how do you think you would have dealt in that situation?
Well, I would have been totally miserable.
I didn't know. I mean, I don't even know if I was miserable. I didn't know how to react. What do you do? What do you, and I think they truly did have the best intention. They really did. But with me, and going from that to that, and then in school, I'll never forget, I was in 4th grade at this time, and my favorite teacher at that time, Mrs. Stoltzfus, and don't ask me to spell that.
Right.
Mrs. Stoltzfus read a book called The Dollhouse Murders. And my foster parents were so upset about that book that it was sacrilegious. They wrote into the school. They called Mrs. Stoltz, and then it made me look terrible to all my, and I was already going through this, already being taken out of school for court hearings. I found my journals back in 4th grade, and it talks about how excited I was to leave school because I could get out of school to go to court. I mean, how?
Wow.
It was going back to that that thought process. And so, I rebelled. I made their life a pure living hell. I look back at that. Nope. Fault of their own, fault of mine. It was different environments but they really did want to try to give me structure. They wanted to try to give me guidance. And it just wasn't, and I completely rebelled. And so I'm yapping away. But
as you began to move into different places, you must have been thinking, where am I? What is this? And who are these people?
That I was. And I mean, it was, again, just a very different environment. It's weird being put into a place where suddenly there's dinner time. There's even just the routines were foreign to me.
Now, even though this was a totally different type of place for you, did it instill any sort of knowledge or instruction that remained with you even after you left? Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, they introduced me to the God that I know now.
Wow.
So although I fought that, I didn't fight it then. I never really fought it later. I still have very, very different principles of their view, but still the umbrella Christianity that I believe in is still that same. Okay. But we have very, very different opinions of interpretation of scripture, of that, but they really did introduce me into that, but again, going to the extreme, I'll never forget Halloween. Now in my biological family, my mother, who, yes, was an alcoholic, who didn't live with us all the time through, but she was my hero. She was my light. She was everything to me. That was, I think, my mission in life was to get back with her. And, and she loved holidays. Oh my gosh, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, May Day. We used to make little May Day baskets and put them on the neighbor's steps in my biological household. Huge thing. And so every holiday was important. Halloween coming up right now, next month. Halloween was so important to me. Still to this day, we have an entire attic full of Halloween decorations upstairs because I got to decorate for Halloween. That was a thing. And when I went to this first foster family, because of their religious views and beliefs that ultimately were shifted on me, you weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween. You weren't allowed to, however, you were allowed to stand out on or answer the door and hand out Bible tracts to your classmates that would come by.
Right.
Ultimately, so that was another very humbling experience for me, if you will, but it was also traumatic because now I'm suddenly a part of this whole thing that I never asked to be a part of.
Yep.
And I'm adhering to this. So again, one more thing that I rebelled against. And again, looking back at this now, so different, in how I see things. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question again, going back, absolutely. I think that family really did introduce me and give me a core to hold on to, which was my faith.
Right. And then you also said something that really resonated with me, which was that your mother, who, even though she may have been an alcoholic and she may have had some challenges, she still had some qualities that were near and dear to you in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my mother and she, it wasn't just with me, it was with all my siblings. Mm-hmm. It's weird how somebody can be so estranged in essence. But again, up until I'd say up until 2 years before I went into foster care, she was a part of our life. And she was a part of our life even through foster care. Now, come to find out, a lot of times she was in residential addiction treatment facilities. Okay. But every single week, she would write me a letter in foster care, a handwritten 5-page letter. She would call every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday, she would call. I can't remember the time, but it was like 7:01 p.m. or 7:31 p.m. because that was right after Home Improvement was done, that TV show, because that was my favorite TV show. So a minute after Home Improvement was done, I knew she would be on the phone calling me every Wednesday night. She asked me to be one of two things, to either be a doctor because she was a nurse by trade. So I had to be a doctor or I had to be Kenny G, which was a famous saxophone player.
Yeah, I know.
Because she was in love with Kenny G. She worshiped Kenny G. Even back when we were in our biological household and we had that station wagon with the wood panels and the cassette tapes. Ooh, when Kenny G came out, that was all that played on that radio was Kenny G, and we hated it. Oh, so yeah.
You know what? We're getting ready to take a brief break. And when we come back from that break, we're going to find out what you did with your mother's proposition that you become Kenny G. I'm looking forward to more of this conversation. We'll be right back after a brief message. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network. And we're back. How you feeling, Rusty?
I'm still here. Yep.
Yep. There you go. So I want to know, how important was it for you to make your mother proud?
That is, I think, I'm asked the question a lot, Cedric, when I do talks or speeches. What was it that drove me? What was it that, we all know the grim statistics of
Yep.
youth in foster care. And it took me a while to admit to myself what really drove me, but it was my mother's, my biological mother's wish that I would become successful. And again, there's that word that can be defined so many ways, but and so interesting enough, later on in life, being a kid, I didn't think about it this way, but one of my first jobs was to become a CNA, certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
And then I went in to become a surgical tech. And then I went into, and so I worked in the medical industry for probably 10 years, maybe a little longer. And that was, again, number one, be a doctor or be Kenny G.
Right.
The other side was I started playing saxophone because of my biological mother. Now, this was a time that I'd moved away from that first foster family.
Okay.
That the conservative ones that we were speaking of that had the best intentions for me. And I moved away. And again, they wanted me to be placed with a Bible school teacher that they had also enrolled me in summer Bible school on top of everything else. And I really did bond with that Bible school teacher and her daughter, which was the same age as me, who became my best friend. That daughter went to a school about 15 miles away from me. At this time in the school, I was pure chaos. I was in 5th grade, going into 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And no teachers knew what to do with me. I was strangling kids in the coat room of the classroom. I was skipping school. Terrible, terrible things. Even worse than that. Nobody knew what to do with me. And when it wasn't working out in this first foster family, they were going to move me again to that Bible school teacher's house that I befriended their daughter, who again was 15 miles away. And they said, okay, while this foster family is getting licensed, or this family is getting licensed to become a foster family to take you, because they really wanted to take you, they were going to move me to that school system 15 miles away so I could be next to that. So that shows now, again, jumping on the other side of the fence, the dedication of the social workers and the people who worked in the foster care. They went above and beyond to move me to What's that?
Did you recognize it at the young age that your social workers were working hard?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I didn't recognize it, nor did I care.
Okay.
I was in survival mode. So I was doing what I needed to do. Until you get older and your brain develops and you're able to rationalize these things and see different sides of things. But no. So they moved me to North Mahaska school system, which was again where the daughter of this family went. And that was in 6th grade. And they had to move me to a temporary foster home that would take me until this other family could get licensed. This was a whole new opportunity. I'll never forget the first day on the playground in 6th grade. I did not open my mouth. I sat out there. I was quiet because I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I was going to screw things up and kids were going to hate me.
Okay.
Because that was my experience in the town 15 miles away, is that I was beat up on the playground or I beat other kids up or whatever. So I didn't open up my mouth. Well, what I didn't realize was there was a couple of factors there. First factor was when I didn't open up my mouth, I was very mysterious to all the girls in the playground, and they thought I was kind of cute. So I kind of became a little bit of an attraction there. Second thing was my foster mom, my temporary foster mom, was the elementary music teacher who was a legend in the school. Everybody loved her. Wow. So suddenly Miss Brickley had a son miraculously
to
live at the school. So I was popular. Can
Okay.
you imagine the difference?
Big time difference.
Huge. Becoming popular with the girls, popular with my foster mom becoming, and still wasn't easy. And Miss Brickley will tell you I put her through very, very trying times too, but it was really different. Again, long story short, that I was doing so well at the new school system. And with Miss Brickley, they decided not to move me to the Bible school teacher's house.
Right.
And so I don't think that Bible school teacher ever did get certified to take me, because they didn't want to move me. They were like, Rusty's doing well. Oh my gosh, he's not trying to kill people. He's not, leave him alone. Leave him alone and that's how I think the new chapter ultimately started in my life.
So how old were you when you started playing the saxophone or any instrument for that matter?
Yeah, so saxophone was in 6th grade, right when I moved. So shortly after I moved to Miss Brickley, again, which was the elementary music teacher, and it was a much smaller school system too. My class had 30, 35 kids in it. I mean, we looked out the window to a cornfield. I mean, it was a much smaller school. And with Miss Brickley being the elementary music teacher, every single week I would still, it was probably only once a month. I'd have supervised visits with my mother, my biological mom, who was still my hero. And so a social worker would come pick me up, drive down to the city that I was from, pick up my sisters who were still living with my biological father, drive us all the way 30 minutes away to meet with my biological mom. We'd sit in this room with all brick walls, I'll never forget, just a naked table, and we'd sit there, and it was the best time of my life, something I look forward to every single week. And it, again, my mother loved Kenny G. Like I said, she had this unhealthy mental relationship with Kenny G, I think. And she had later come to find out she had asked my oldest sister to play the saxophone when we were all a family. We were still in that greenhouse that I talked about. And so she had got a saxophone. And later on, come to find out, my mother had very little possessions, but she kept a hold of that saxophone. So even after we had all been put in foster care, she'd moved away, she kept that saxophone. And she had called up Miss Brickley when I was living with Miss Brickley, the foster mom, and said, hey, if during a supervised visit, I give Rusty a saxophone and you're a music teacher, would you give him saxophone lessons? And Miss Brickley agreed. And during a supervised visit, my mom, I think it was either my birthday or maybe Christmas, gave me the saxophone. And I was not overly excited. Be honest with you, I wasn't really excited about playing, but it's what my mom wanted.
Right.
And we had to send that saxophone into repairs. I think we probably paid 3 times. Miss Brickley probably paid 3 times what it was worth just to get the saxophone repaired. And then Miss Brickley started me on music lessons.
What did playing the saxophone do for you therapeutically?
At first, nothing. At first, I hated it. I really did. I didn't like practicing. Right. I wasn't into routine. I wasn't into structure. I wasn't into, but again, living with the music teacher, it was a little difficult to get away with not playing things correctly. She'd be upstairs in the kitchen doing dishes, and she knew the music books because she taught from them. So if I was downstairs messing around, she would know it, and she'd stomp the floor to the rhythm of what it was supposed to be. And so, now later is where things really drastically took a turn with my music. And that was, I was still living with Miss Brickley. And it was January 24th, 1994, the date that will live in infamy. And I got called out of physical education. And I was in 7th grade at this point. And I was told that I needed to go to Miss Brickley's classroom. So I was already in junior high at this point, but I had to go to Miss Brickley's classroom.
Okay.
It was in a different school, only less than a mile away. So I went there, and Miss Brickley, I could see that she already had tears in her eyes. I knew something was wrong, and she said that your dad's coming to talk to you. And this was my biological father. And at this point, the court had already been trying to get me back home with my biological father. It wasn't working out. I mean, that's a whole different story. But I knew something serious was happening. And it's weird because I kind of already knew what it, I already, looking back at it, I knew what had happened.
Wow.
And so Miss Brickley drove me home, and I waited at her house, at our house, for my father to show up. And he delivered the news that my mom had killed herself, that she had committed suicide. And that was when things drastically turned. In several ways. You know, looking back at I'm lucky to be able to have held on to some of my journals and some of the things that the caseworkers and social workers were working with me on.
Mm-hmm.
I still have those. So interesting to see that after my mom died, I started drawing caskets. I wanted to become a mortician. I wanted to become, and seeing my journal entries really showed ultimately how depressed I was too. It was not a good situation. So after I don't even remember exactly what happened, but I had a suicide plan. I didn't want to be here anymore. I had it all scoped out, what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. And so I was hospitalized again. And this is the Cedar Rapids one from the earlier when we were talking.
Okay.
I get my hospitals confused. Too many.
Yeah, they all seem the same.
So I was hospitalized, and again, to fast forward a little bit, I was hospitalized. What was so cool is I was a part of this small community, this small school that cared about me. And I would have classmates write me handwritten letters every week, and they'd be delivered to me in this hospital. And it was unreal. I mean, that I had friends, that I had people that really cared about me, and that I had Miss Brickley, and that I had, and it was after that, again, my mom wanted me to become Kenny G. And that was the driving force. Miss Brickley says that was probably the last gift my mom could have left me.
Yep.
Was that saxophone, and that, and so I took to it. And that's when I started the practice. That's when I took,
That's when you begin to get serious with it. Wow. Very, very inspirational. Before we go to our next piece, I want to know if you could take a few seconds and speak to young people who might be going through something similar to what you've been through. And right now they're in the rough. They're fighting, they're upset, they're angry. Their parents recently passed away. And for those of you who don't know, I also went through years of foster care in my life. My biological mother also passed away. Shout out to my mom who's in the building right now. And so I can totally understand some of the traumas, but can you provide some inspiration to young people out there going through similar stuff?
Well, inspiration, I'm not sure.
Words of encouragement.
I can give some advice.
Okay.
I mean, and my biggest advice would be everybody's good at something. And whatever it is that you're good at, grasp onto it. No matter, like with my music, no matter what home somebody could take me from, no matter what people, could take out of my life, no matter what, they couldn't take my music. You can't take that away from me. That's mine. And if I practice and I get good at it and I get better than somebody else, that's mine. You can't take that away. Find what it is that you're good at. And that's the great thing about that we're all different people. I mean, Cedric, you're so good at things that I'm not good at and that I couldn't be good at. Probably even if I really, really tried, like cooking. And now I don't know if you're good at cooking.
I cook amazing steak. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm not good at cooking. The joke is that I can burn water,
right?
Which I probably can't, But if you're good at cooking, you find that and you go for it. You turn it into your craft. And what's going to happen is when you do that, people are going to start appreciating you for more than how other people just see you, if that makes sense. The stereotype that's put around you, be it that you're a foster kid or be it that you're, sorry, I'm going to say another swear word.
Okay.
Be it that you're a little asshole or be it that you're whatever. People are going to start looking at you and saying, damn, you got a talent.
Yeah.
That's rare. I mean, that sets home different in your head when you hear that. And guess what? You do. And you can do that like nobody else can too. So that's my encouragement is, and if you think that you're not good at something, you're not looking hard enough.
There you go. You're not looking hard enough.
No.
Hard enough. I really appreciate your words. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you a video that I pulled up of Rusty. And, I'm going to have to skip to the middle of it so you guys can go back. Your website is rustyjohnson.net. Is that correct?
Yes, rustyjohnson.net.
I want you guys to go to his website, rustyjohnson.net, and check him out. I noticed that sometimes YouTube or Facebook, whichever, will cut out some of the audio when it knows that the music was from like a copyrighted song.
Oh, okay.
But I still want you to see this guy in action. So give me a second.
And no matter what song I play, I guarantee you it doesn't sound like whatever it's copyrighted.
Right.
So, because it's all over the place.
Right. Let's see what we got here.
Oh, with Liz Michael, the famous Liz Michael.
The famous Liz.
Oh yeah, she's with Cedric the Entertainer. She's been in movies with James Earl Jones. Yeah.
Hold on.
Coming up.
You can talk. What are we looking at?
So here, American Dreams, the fundraiser I did for foster care. Here's my solo. Yeah, on this show, we had Marvin. Well, on this one, William Blake. We had Liz Michael. Have you ever watched Friday Night Lights, Cedric?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Smash's mom.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and Liz and I are dear friends, and she flew all the way to Iowa to ultimately raise money for foster kids to get involved in music, sports, theater, camp, just what I was talking about. Whatever you're good at, we were raising money to do that. Actually, I think right behind me is a American Dreams poster from the Strawberry Bowl in California that I did. And it's just all about getting people involved in that community, because you know this, Cedric. I mean, it takes a village to do this. It is a group effort, all community involvement, and yeah, I mean it's and that was one of pride and joy. I love Liz, love Marvin Matthews, all these folks that have joined the efforts, and we've flown in and done shows and concerts, and what's really exciting is AMP. I'm wearing my AMP shirt here.
Who are they?
Okay, so AMP is Achieving Maximum Potential.
Okay.
It's a youth alumni resource group here in Iowa, foster youth leadership group, who get together, train other youth, get out there, speak, rally. A lot of and I just did some research on you. Yes, I was stalking you too, Cedric.
Oh, wow.
And found out that you're involved in foster club and have been a foster club advocate. And kind of a lot what Foster Club does too. So it's this Iowa youth leadership group. And AMP was there at the very first American Dreams concert that I did. So I was living in Dallas, Texas, flew in with Liz Michael and William Blake, and we flew in Buddy Shanahan, the late Buddy, legendary pianist. And we put on this sold out show at Central College, a huge arena. And we raised, I don't remember how many thousands and thousands of dollars for foster youth to get. What was really inspiring to me was that after the show, even the entertainers were talking about how touched they were, not how educated they were, but how touched they were, and they wanted to go back and make a difference.
Yep.
and all of the communities that they were a part of. It's infectious.
It is. It is.
It really is.
You know, when I was listening to your music just now, I pretty much got emotional. A lot of the people who I love and respect, they also have a soft spot for Kenny G. They have a soft spot for that saxophone. That saxophone does something to people that nothing else can. And when you were talking about developing a craft, tuning in, working hard, and getting good at it, you know, I couldn't have imagined that you became a star on that saxophone. And we were looking at a star just now on that stage. I thought that what you did was phenomenal. And then we had a comment come into the building when you were doing that too as well. Yolanda says, "Wow, I love it." You know, when you play that saxophone the way that you did there, it touches people's hearts, and that's the result of hard work and dedication. Then you decided to give back. You joined AMP. And so can you talk to me about what you do today with AMP day to day?
Yeah. So actually the organization that I work with during the day, as a prevention specialist, they kind of oversee AMP. They guide AMP kind of with finances and that. So it's really a youth-led organization.
Okay.
And again, AMP goes all throughout the state, all throughout the country, actually, and does great things. And that's another thing that I want to tell you out there that are listening. Get involved. I mean, you as a foster youth, only you have the voice as a foster youth that you can use as a foster youth that other people don't have. So, and you know what? Kudos to everybody. It's your choice. If you're a foster youth and you say, hey, when I'm done with this, I want to get out. I want to never look back. Awesome. Okay, that is absolutely a choice. The other choice is to give back and use that voice that only you have to really make a difference as like an expert, like what you've done, Cedric. I mean, look at what you've created. Look at what you're doing. I mean, only you could do that because of your experience and because of your expertise. And so if youth can kind of grasp onto that, like the youth of AMP, so they all get together and nobody can understand your individual experience. I mean, because we're all unique, but you can empathize with one another because only y'all have been through this.
That's right.
You can get together in that circle and come up with great ideas, this is how we change the world.
That's right. You know what? We are headed toward the end of the show, and it's going by so fast. I've got a couple questions that I want to ask you if I can as we depart. I really wish that we could talk more because you have a lived experience that I think people can identify with clear across the world. And I appreciate your time today. You're a very busy guy. This wasn't easy for you to make time, but you did. And I want to ask you, what exactly is survival to you?
So, Cedric, I think we kind of talked about that. I would say survival is going to look different for every person, but ultimately it's striving to live. For me, looking back at my childhood and looking back, it was for when people say survival to me, it was doing what I knew to do to live.
Okay.
To put that for me, that's what survival means.
What is success to you?
So interesting. Success. Success would be, for me, again, for everybody, that's going to be different. For me, it's putting me on top of no, let me change that. I'd say success for me is being happy.
And what is greatness to you?
Greatness for me is succeeding. I mean, I'm going to turn it back around there. Ultimately, greatness to me is succeeding and being happy. And that's greatness like nobody else could define it because it's individual.
That's right. Hey, shout out to Yolanda and Corinne who tuned in. We love you all. I'm right at the point where it's critical. Rusty, I want to let you know that I've listened to your journey, that I've seen